Well, hello. It's so great to have you on the show, Gareth. I'm so excited to talk all about whiskey, America Single Malt, all that stuff. So, why don't you, even though I've done a little intro, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and let's start?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Susan, and great to be with you. Happy to give a little introduction. Just basics. I'm Gareth Moore. I am the CEO of Virginia Distillery Company here in Virginia. I've been doing that for, let's see, coming on 12 to 13 years now. It's been quite the journey, and I expect it'll continue to be. But that's what I'm here to talk about.
All right. Well, here at Lush Life, we start at the beginning. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about, where you grew up, how you found your way into making whiskey?
Sure. So, to be honest, it's not so much my story as it is my family story. Really, my late father, Dr. George G. Moore, he and my mother both born and raised in Ireland. They were high school sweethearts. Dad was a scholarship kid, got a scholarship to University College Dublin. From there, he got a scholarship thanks to a professor of his named John Keeling, who got him a scholarship to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., which is where I was born. So he came in 1972. My mother came a few years later. She also did her MBA at GW. Dad did his master's degree and then I think 2 doctoral degrees at GW. And he lived out the American dream, which, you certainly hear various positives and negatives. Is the American dream dead? But from a limited sample size of one, I had the great privilege of getting to witness that growing up, of somebody who came to our country with, literally just a couple $100 and some hopes and a dream and a scholarship, and did get to do quite well. So that's the very, very earliest background. And if I fast forwarded through the American dream, he built out some tech companies. We lived in the Metro DC area. I took a little jaunt over to the West Coast, San Diego, for about 8 years. Moved back east, and in 2011. Dad sold his primary operating business. It was called Targus Info. It did a lot with data and analytics and caller ID and what have you, but not nearly as exciting as whiskey. But that same year, later in 2011, he decided that he wanted to take a lifelong passion for single malts, which are traditionally associated not with Ireland, but with Scotland, particularly back in the day. But he wanted to take that passion and take his adopted home, Virginia, and make the next great American whiskey. And I think that's
All right. Okay.
that's what he was able to do. So that was, yeah.
All right. I have to interrupt there. So, number one, it sounds exciting what he was doing. So, he was probably on the cutting edge of all that tech stuff. So, that is
Yeah.
amazing. Now, was he alongside all that tech stuff, was he always drinking whiskey? I mean, obviously he's from Ireland. Was Irish whiskey in the house a lot? Like, what was his relationship to whiskey before he decided to start it?
Yeah, I mean, it might have been easier for the marketing folks if he was Scottish or if he preferred Irish whiskey. But funny enough, he was an Irish guy that liked Scotch whiskey. So that was what he was into. Single malts. He was a big collector. In fact, we trace it back to the year I was born, Aberlour, which is a fabulous distillery. In 1982, one of their marketing folks had the vision of, hey, if we sell some casks this year and then bottle them in 2000, this far off distance of the millennium, that'll be 18-year whiskey. And so my mother purchased a hogshead for my father in 1982, and every year, they send some swag and barware and some samples every couple of years. And so that cask of Aberlour was, even though the contents weren't behind the bar, all the swag was, and we knew about it growing up. Now, just as I'm thinking about it, the actual liquid, a lot of it is in my basement right now. But yeah, it was part of the Millennium casks that they released in 2000. They also sold another batch in 1988 for some 12-year whiskeys. But yeah, that goes all the way back to 1982 in terms of having a good good amount of whiskey. The family now has close to 10,000 casks, not just one, but we can trace it back to, I guess, 43 years ago.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Now, obviously a lifelong passion. How about for you, since you're the one I'm interviewing? Did you also love the Scottish
Yeah.
whiskey, or were you drinking beer and bourbon and stuff like that since you were American born and bred?
Yeah, I mean, if we went back to the marketing folks, right, that always want a good story, they would love if it was also my passion. But I cannot tell a lie. It was very much a inherited passion. So I mean, you hit it on the head. Beer and bourbon, anything under the sun. I was on the consumer end of it, not the aficionado end of it. In fact, I could admit a horrible drink that was my standard go-to my senior year of college was a Dewar's white label and soda with a lime. And I don't know where the lime came from. It hopped in there at some point, but it's funny to think about that. I have college buddies that know what I'm doing now, and we'll burn up the Dewar's and soda with a lime. But in the early 2000s, that was the go-to. But no, I mean, I had no background in whiskey. Sure, I mean, I'd been to some distilleries. My father knew some of the 101, but I can't say that I was a collector or an aficionado. I probably couldn't say Isla correctly or tell you the difference between any sort of types of whiskey out there. So no, it wasn't something that I had in my background. I didn't have any background in consumer type goods. Didn't have a background in manufacturing, whether it's food or beverage. Complete novice in all ways. So no, this is all Dad's idea, not mine.
All right, back to your dad then. So when he sold his company, he decided to
Yes.
create a distillery, and I assume he always knew that he wanted to do some kind of whiskey. Now, you do
Yes.
America Single Malt. In the South, there's a
Yep.
lot of bourbon. How did he come up with single malt, and why did he want to do that so passionately?
Yeah. So, you do what you like, and you do what you know. And Dad wasn't a big bourbon guy, and he absolutely wasn't big into having people tell him what to do or what he should do or what this is the way things have always been done. That is a quality that I definitely have from him. That if somebody tells me I can't do it, then I'm definitely going to do it much harder. But yeah, he was really, I guess, not inspired by this idea of American single malt, but really of the idea that single malts had a great history. It had a great depth of different flavors and stories of where everything came from, and it also had the story of exploration and moving beyond Scotland. Right? I mean, American single malt is not the first single malt by far. By decades or maybe even a century, when you think of Scotland, even India. And in fact, when we were building out the distillery, it was Catalan out of Taiwan that was becoming the industry darling briefly. So, being able to make those products outside of Scotland, we're not the trailblazer there. There are many behind us. But doing it in the U.S., I think, it really provided that unique combination of, what my dad liked in terms of the product, but also continuing that very long tradition of immigrants in the U.S., taking those old world stories and traditions and techniques and applying them in the new world. But really importantly, not just trying to copy what was done in the old world, trying to replicate Scotch was never success for us, right? And when you think of really just in food and beverage in the U.S., we have pizza. Well, that's Italian. Yeah, kind of. or macaroni and cheese, or hamburgers or hot dogs. And these all have their old world traditions. And each of those examples are 100 plus years back. But I like to think of even, ongoing traditions. I could think of some in the last 10 years, but 30 years ago, some folks on the West Coast were eating raw fish. And that would sound crazy if you didn't, wrap it in rice. But today we have sushi. And I could order from 5 places to be here for lunch in the next 20 minutes. But if you took all those things that I would be tasting, or for ordering online, like a Philadelphia roll, having cream cheese in there, I mean, I don't know that they would approve in Tokyo. That would be very, very outside the norm. But my point is that copying an old world tradition and doing it here in the new world is not really what we do. We make it better. We make it for the American palate. We add cream cheese. Now we don't add cream cheese to the whiskey. That's just an example. But you get what I mean, right? It's not about just copying something. It's adapting it and really making it your own. And I'm proud that our products can compete globally, but not out of pure imitation, but making something that is uniquely has a sense of place, and couldn't be replicated without really our climate and maturation environment.
Of course. Now, making it your own, you of course led me so well into the next set of questions. How was he going to make it his own? Obviously, you're in a different place, so it's different ingredients.
Yeah.
But maybe you can talk me through kind of his idea, where he started, and then where he did make it his own. Obviously, making whiskey pretty much around the world is doing. You got kind of similar ingredients, but how did he make it his own?
So, to be honest, there wasn't a fulsome plan of exactly what the profile was going to be, what kind of techniques and ingredients and so on. And that really adds up for Dad. He wasn't let's get to the nth degree of perfect planning. Don't let good enough be the enemy of perfect, but just dive in head first. And that was absolutely the way he went about business and many things in life. And that was how the distillery was built out. And so when he was still living, obviously got the land, got the stills, got some Scottish consultants. And unfortunately, it was only 18 months into construction that he took a heart attack and passed. And it was all very sudden. He wasn't ill. And to be honest, I wasn't working with him on the distillery. We had other things we were working on together. So my background's in finance, still have a role there. And at the time, Dad and I were working on what I thought of more grown-up type endeavors, investments and tech startups. Like that's not whatever lark Dad was working on down in Nelson County. Hey, the whiskey, you can buy whiskey at the store. I don't know what Dad's up to, but he can do what he wants with his spare time. But together we did grown up things. We had a company called a pitching. There's a deal tombstone up in my background here, and I sold out to Microsoft in 2013, about 6 months after we passed. But that was the type of thing that we were working on together, not whiskey. And so, it was never in my mind that it was something that I would be leading in any way, shape, or form. I'm kind of circling back to the reason I was saying that is that there just wasn't a plan of here's exactly what we're going to make the flavor profile like. Here's exactly how the branding is going to go. In fact, we did end up changing up some of the basic pieces of the business plan. He was focused more on let's develop inventory first before we release a product. We released a blended product using some distillate that we had imported. We built a visitor center concurrently opening when we started distilling so that we could start building a brand around the business and so on. I'd love to say that there was a grand plan for exactly what the flavor profile was supposed to be like, but the reality is we figured it out over time. Happy to go into exactly how we figured it out, because it is one part that I'm personally pretty proud of how we were able to come down to that.
Of course, I want to hear that. That's all part of the story. But what I just want to back up for a sec. You said, he jumped into it. Were there kind of the basics, like, had he thought about water? Had he thought about, malted barley? Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Obviously, he wanted to do an American single malt, so he knew that you were going to use malted barley. Had he thought about where he was going to find those things, or was it just none of that was even in any notes anywhere?
Yeah. It was in process for sure. So for the water, you have to start with the water because you need a high volume of good, clean water that you don't want to have to be processing and so on. And so in getting the land, that was definitely a prerequisite, was getting the wells tested and so on to see what the flow rate would be like. You need a lot. And then the second, the water quality. And we were lucky enough to find a location with very, very high volumes of clean water. We are not too terribly far from Kentucky, so we have some of that limestone underneath us that had the impact of filtering the water to a degree. It does add calcium, but really it's the lack of iron is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And so, that was present. The location down in Nelson County was really, they've called it Alcohol Alley before. The largest cider works in the state is down there. The largest craft brewery before it was acquired by a major was very close to us. Several wineries, and there are 4 distilleries in Nelson County, Virginia. And so, having the local government understand what that is, understand the tourism associated with it, and then having, a labor pool available was also an important ingredient there.
Of course.
And then, plenty of land so that we could have room for warehouses. So we're on 100 acres in a valley. We say 100 acres, but a lot of it's just steep slope in the valley where you practically can't really build anything. But those were some of the early starting points. And of course, you'd say, okay, well, how are you going to do that if you don't really know where you're going? Well, there were consultants. And so one of the most important ones was Harry Coburn. He was the the production manager for all of Morse and Bomer. And he was the master distiller for Bomer Distillery on Isla. And he retired in the early 90s, but as his wife says, he's very bad at retiring because 30 years later, he was still working with us. And Harry, I believe, is probably closer to 90 than 85 now, but he is an engineer, not a chemist or a romanticized distiller, but an engineer. And we've had a lot of folks at our facility that give a lot of compliments about how it was built, just in terms of the process flow, the way the piping doesn't allow dead legs, the way that there's just a lot of continuity through the process. So we have Harry to thank for that, for sure. And from there, I mean, we got other consultants that really complimented what Harry was doing to get us to what's in the bottle today.
Yeah. And so go on, tell me about, so sadly, I'm so sorry that your father died in this process, but you were left with it and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. How did, if for someone whose drink, and I am going to bring it back, was Dewar's and soda and lime.
Yeah.
Obviously you have these wonderful consultants, but kind of the buck stops with you. How did you know, like, what was the right direction to go in flavor profile wise? Right.
So, I would say I had the blessing of being very, 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 very naive. Right now, I'm just very, very naive. So I've dropped 2 of the berries over the last dozen years here, and I'll be just naive at some point, but I was very, very, very naive and, probably like my father, a little headstrong. And, when I first went to visit the distillery, I had never been there when my father was living. It was only 18 months that it was under construction. And so it was kind of a shell of a building. But the stills were there because you put the stills in place and then build the building around it. No windows or doors, and everything's on a catwalk. So, the tanks and so on go deep under the apparent floor. And so when I showed up, it's like, hey, there are stills, there are some tanks, where's the on button? Let's start going here. Again, being very naive, I did not realize that there's a heck of a lot of work to do. And, we say construction, we really mean engineering of the pumps and the valves, the piping, the boiler system, the chiller system. One of my first questions is like, why do we need both? Why don't we get rid of one or the other? If we're heating things up, why do we need to cool them down? Somebody explained it later. The electrical system, the malt handling system, the malt storage, big old silos, wastewater processing. Didn't know about that one. That was expensive and complicated. Then we had things like the warehouses. You make a bunch of whiskey, you got to put it somewhere. So we built that out. Then the visitor center, which is kind of the heart of the distillery now, built that. My wife built that part, so I can't take credit there. And then eventually a bottling house, and now we have a vatting house. So it turns out a shell with surrounding some stills does not a distillery make.
Wait a sec.
But yeah,
Let me interrupt you for a second. Was there ever a time during this whole process when you were like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? We're going to stop. Or was it just, you're like, this is my dad's legacy. I just have
it
to
was
power
always
through.
too late. It was always too late, like 5 years later. Just reflecting on things that I'd done that, it was my first rodeo. And so there were obviously plenty of mistakes that took time to learn that they were mistakes, obviously. Thankfully never gave up on it. And it took a long time, right? I mean, this was May of 2013 when Dad passed, and it was November of 15 when we started distilling. So it was that period where we were building out the distillery and of course the business around it. But what happened was we had a couple of different consultants. Harry was remote and kind of gave us the overview. He wasn't there day to day. He was over in Scotland. And so we had some others that we came to a really interesting point in the summer of 2015 when we were months away from starting distilling, and we were building our warehouses. And we knew where they were going to go. We had site planning and so on, but we needed to figure out, what format they would be in. And the question came down to climate. And so the prevailing kind of opinion was that you can't make single malt whiskey in a hot climate. And we're not hot year round. It's beautiful today, but we'll go above 110 in the summer. Inside of our cask houses, we've gotten as high as 106, and the humidity is unreal in the summer. Yeah. And then in the winter, it's the opposite. We'll go down to single digits Fahrenheit, and it'll be very, very dry. And so the opinion was, well, that's not how single malt has been aged. And some people thought that it was going to be a very negative thing. Right. These thought that, the hottest places in a warehouse in Scotland, the top, the whiskey can get sour, and it'll be negative, and this is no good. And so, not knowing anything, he was like, "Yep, let's take that advice, right?" And we went down the path of building climate-controlled warehouses. And so, I mentioned earlier, Alcohol Alley. There's plenty of alcohol businesses nearby, so we started visiting, neighbors, wineries and so on, where they would have climate-controlled warehouses. And a lot of it comes down to the insulation, which is expensive, but not nearly as expensive as the active systems to heat and to cool. because a warehouse is a large open space. It's a bit like going to a warehouse store like a Costco or a Home Depot or what B&Q you might call it. And it's expensive equipment on the front end. It's also expensive to operate. And so you can tell that I'm not a great marketer. I would love to say that this was all about the flavor profile, but being a finance guy, I was like, this is expensive. This is very, very expensive to build these climate controlled warehouses. And so, we're going through all of the specs and so on. And in 2015, Catalan won, I guess, outright best single malt of the year at the World Whiskey Awards, which was huge because it was out of Taiwan, wasn't Scotland or even, Ireland, Japan, and so on. So it made a big splash, but it really attributed the quality of the liquid to the maturation environment, which didn't have the cool weather that we get in the winter, but, tropical climate year round. Okay. And so, again, I'd love to say in my mind, like, oh, it's going to be great tasting whiskey. No, it's like, this will be less expensive. So go to these crazy warehouses. And so that was a challenge with some of our consultants and folks that we were working with as we were building the distillery. And so I endeavored to find the person behind Catalan, a guy named Dr. Jim Swan. That was available online. I was actually able to get in contact with him through a business school buddy of mine who was Taiwanese and had a wine distribution business there. And so we connected with Dr. Swan. I was very surprised to learn that he was actually Scottish, not Taiwanese. And he agreed to consult for us. It wasn't universal amongst our consultants. It was with Harry Coburn because they had worked together on many projects, including Catalan. So they were good friends. So we brought over Dr. Swan, and we have reasonable scale now, but at the time, somebody came to the U.S. I went and picked him up at the airport, right? So I went up to Dulles Airport and picked up Dr. Swan, and it seemed to have learned everything I needed really during that drive, 2.5 hours down to the distillery. And, really sticks with me today, some of those little quotes from that conversation. And Dr. Swan, who also passed in 2017, on Valentine's Day of February 2017, but some of these quotes really stuck with me. And his emotion about it as well. He was rather annoyed to learn that we were considering climate controlled warehouses, and he used the word rob. Gareth, you're going to rob the whiskey of an opportunity for a sense of place. And he said that very emotionally, like he was angry with me, right? You're going to rob them, rob the whiskey. And what else did he say? Well, if you wanted to replicate the climate in Scotland, then why didn't you just build the distillery in Scotland? This makes no sense.
Good point.
So he went through, well, exactly, right? But it does kind of go full circle to that idea that I started with of making something your own versus replicating what they do somewhere else. And so that conversation really stuck with me, and he got into a lot of the specifics. We designed the warehouses. He's more than just a maturation expert. Really, his background was most in depth on casks, different types of wood, and how the spirit interacts with the casks. But he had his specifics of the distilling process of how we get that ready for the warm weather maturation. There's just a few simple things that we do. He had really, minimal insulation, no active heating or cooling for the warehouses. Let the climate have at it, which is what we do. And also really importantly, came up with our kind of recipe for our casks. So we use roughly 50% former bourbon casks. Dr. Swan had a relationship with Brown Forman that he connected us with, and 11 years later, we're still using that exact same cooperage through Brown Forman. Same with the STR cask. We call those the Cuvée cask, but STR stands for shave, toast, and rechar. He invented those casks. We're not the first, but I only recently, in the past year or so, found a distillery that wasn't working with Dr. Swan that started using them. I thought that was a great compliment to him that, years after he had passed, people were still using his casks, even if they had never met him. And then the last type of cask we use are sherry butts, and we still today work with the cooperages that Dr. Swan connected us with. So yeah, that was the Dr. Swan recipe for success. He knew how a warm climate worked. He said he was excited to see what the cold climate would do for us. But really, I mean, he predicted, I mean, science, not necessarily, art, romance, but with the heat, you get the expansion of the casks and the spirit gets pulled into it. But with the cold, dry winters, they contract and spit the liquid back into the cask. And so you have much more dynamic in and out interaction with the spirit and the wood.
Yes, I remember you telling me that when we met. And also you said that, well, the angels are lucky because they get a lot more of the angel share, sadly for us humans, but happily for the angels.
That's right. You're probably being polite because I probably said something much ruder about the angels, but that's really a fabulous marketing term for lost profits. But yeah, no, it's absolutely right. So we have a lot of losses, and Dr. Swan told us to get ready for those, which we were in our financial model and so on. But in 4 years, which is our standard for when we go to finishing casks, in an expert cask, we lose approximately 18%. So that does slow down after the first 4 years. But that's a rough 4 years to start. And we obviously knew from Dr. Swan that that was going to happen, and that our maturation kind of curve would be a lot faster than in a much more mild climate. And that's been a challenge for us with consumers and the market in general to kind of break that preconceived notion that age equals quality and value. If we're speaking from value, like dollars and cents, I'm happy to share the financial model that the liquid get quite costly when you lose a lot of it. And so that's an important part. And then just on quality, I often ask people to do a blind sample. Don't ask about the age until you've tasted it and passed judgment on its quality before hearing, oh no, it's only 8 years old. Well, you liked it, so that's pretty good.
I remember you telling me that because of the high humidity. It's just zoom in right along. Now let's get into some of the expressions you have. What did you start with? I have some bottles behind me, so I can pull them down if you tell me those are the ones to bring down. And I know you have a bunch for those people watching on video. Yeah, maybe you can take us chronologically through, what were your first, how long, when was the first expression out, and then to what the more innovative things that you're doing now, even though everything was innovative, but maybe I should use a different word. Maybe what's newer on, I guess that's the same word. Yeah. But so when did you come out with the first one, and what was, what did everyone think?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, we kind of changed the business model up a bit to really launch a brand before we had our own whiskey. And so we imported aged single malt from Scotland, and then we used finishing cask to kind of make it our own. And we called that product Virginia Highland whiskey, kind of mixing the Highlands and Virginia, obviously. And over time, as we had our own very young whiskey, 18 to 36 months, we started slowly, bit by bit, adding that into the liquid for the secondary maturation in port casks and cider casks and a few others. And that really gave us the kind of capacity and competency around blending, because blending is a very, very, very important part of whiskey making. And learning that early was good versus later when we had our own juice. And so yeah, we definitely cut our teeth on that product, and didn't start with the quality that we would certainly be proud of today, but good to learn your lessons the hard way, and always strive for improvement and so on. And so that product line was around between 2015 through 21 or so. And in fact, it was so tasty that in 2019, the Scotch Whisky Association took grave offense that we called it Virginia Highland whiskey, because only they can use the word Highland. So we had a very fun and exciting lawsuit that
A little slap on the wrist.
a little slap on
Scottish
the wrist.
style. Scottish
We
style.
took our medicine. Yeah, we changed the product name from Virginia Highland whiskey to VHW. So that was the VHW product line. But by 2020, we had 5-year whiskey that we had aged ourselves, and so we released the first of the Courage and Conviction line, which is the more premium line. So everything's divided into two parts. We have our house wine, Virginia Distillery Company. That is all about finishing casks. And then we have the Courage and Conviction line. That is the premium line that is focused on primary maturation and tends to be a bit older. And so starting with Courage and Conviction, we have the signature malt.
Hold on, which I think I have
and
behind me.
the blue tin behind you there. Yeah, exactly. Well, there it is.
Yes,
yeah,
the blue
yeah.
tin. This came in the blue tin, everyone, just so you know.
Yeah.
Nothing's.
That's
So
it.
this was the first, Courage and Conviction, which I love the
That was
name,
the-
by the way.
It's pretty good. If you say it louder, you'll see my golden retrievers. They're named Courage and Conviction. They were born 5 years after the whiskey came out, so they were named for the whiskey, not vice versa. But let's see if I can get the Courage Conviction. I hear them waking up. They'll be here in a moment.
I
There we go,
love
you
that.
hear-
But Conviction is a
all
big
right.
name for a dog. What is it? Like
There he is. There you go.
Vic?
You say hi.
Vic maybe is a short
There we go.
form.
There it is.
Oh, I love
And then where's
it.
Courage? They're brother. They're brothers. They're from the same litter.
That's so
But
cute.
yeah, the whiskey was not named for the dogs, vice versa. But it was the saying that my father liked to use. He didn't come up with it. He just really liked to use it. And it was the idea to have the courage of your convictions, meaning that, if you have something that you really believe in, you have a conviction, then let that be the power, the courage that drives you. And that was a saying that he liked to use, and certainly was a big part about how we had built out the distillery. So it seemed very natural, and it just kind of fit. We went through all sorts of iterations. We had a marketing company that helped us come up with 150 of the worst names you've ever heard. We paid a lot for that report, and so we were going to use the least horrible of the horrible brand names. But our brand director at the time knew that the names we had were no good, and she came up with Courage and Conviction, which worked out fabulously. So
it.
yeah,
And of course, there's a
that's
secret
Courage
to
and
the
Conviction.
bottle, right?
Of course. So as I explained to some of my kids here, if you really love a toy like a magnet, then make sure everybody else gets one. So the medallion on the shoulder of the bottle here is something you see in a lot of different whiskeys and primarily scotches, but whether it's the Dalmore or Glenfiddich, you'll see kind of some artwork made of metal on the side. Again, I'm a finance guy, and so you're going through the financial build, and you're like, man, that's a nice piece, and that's value, and it's expensive. It's a pity people will throw it away. And so we made it so you don't throw it away. It's a magnet that attaches, and you can pull it off.
Take it off.
Absolutely, you can use it. You put it on your bar fridge. I use it sometimes as a
There you go.
a ball marker for golf. I don't use it very often. Mainly my balls go straight to the hole, so I don't need the marker. But that's not true. But yeah, it's a fun element. And it could be part of storytelling of here was the Courage and Conviction that we were enjoying when we were sitting around that campfire, or having that reunion or that get together and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, that's the signature malt.
And how many are there in the Courage and Conviction range?
So the way it works is that signature malt is a cross section of the inventory that Dr. Swan had prescribed. So it is 50% of an ex-bourbon cask. Those are first fills from Brown-Forman, not including any Jack Daniels, just their bourbons. So the Woodford Reserve and Early Times and Old Forester and so on. Then it would be 25% of the STR, the Cuvée cask that Dr. Swan invented. So that is shaved, toast, and rechar. Those are European red wine casks that after they've been used, they're broken down. The hoops get knocked off and the individual staves are stacked up and then shaved on the inside. And when they're shaving the staves, they're trying to do it to a very precise level. It's about 3 to 5 millimeters where they'd like to shave deep enough where there's untoasted wood. So you're getting past that initial toast that was done for the wine, but not too deep because you want that fresh wood to be wine soaked. And so once that is shaved, they recooper the barrel. It's not always the exact same staves that go back together. But once it's recoopered, they do a toast and then a flash char on it, and it makes a kind of crust on the inside. The way I think about it is, if you take a steak and throw it on the grill, you can get those char marks. But if you have a marinated steak, you'll kind of that crust of the marinade, this caramelization effect that draws out sugars that really result in a nice whiskey. That's my favorite cask by far. So you can hear me waxing poetic about it here. And then the last 25% are from sherry butts. So again, those are also first fill. We get those from Jerez, obviously, and roughly a third between Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez, and Fino casks. So those casks are what compose the signature malt. And then within the Courage and Conviction range, we also have individual expressions of each of those casks. And we have a few other kind of sub-expressions, special releases here and there of casks that we've come across, for a certain release. Our Visionary collection under Courage and Conviction is a Spanish red oak that we've come across that works really nicely. We have a double cask reserve, which is a bit higher proof with just the STR cask and the bourbon cask, and always have exciting things in the pipeline.
Yeah, that cask, that STR cask sounds so amazing. It just is such a great idea.
It is great.
So innovative,
Yeah.
and it really brings something so different to the whiskeys, definitely. I have this little drink strams set, which anyone can get. And I realize they have, this is what I've been looking at while I'm talking to you, is that in it is the sherry cask, the cuvee cask, and the single malt. So, for anyone out there, they can try that. Also 2 of the Virginia Distillery expressions, but we'll talk about that in a sec when I grab that bottle. Now, I can't remember when we met. Was this the cider cask? Was that Courage and Conviction, or was that the other one?
No, so that would be the house line under Virginia Distillery. And so
then let me grab that
Courage and
bottle.
Conviction
Hold on.
line, yeah, of course.
Let me grab that bottle.
Yep.
Oh, yes, here it is. I'm back.
There we go.
Because you said cider. You threw in cider there, so you threw me for a sec.
No,
So
for
this
sure.
is the other. This is the Virginia Distillery.
That's right. That's right. So that's the other line. That is what we call our house brand, because it's just named for the company. And whereas Courage and Conviction is all about primary maturation. So in those casks, which are sometimes quite costly casks, for 6, 7, 8 years, the house style is an initial maturation just in ex-bourbon casks for about 4 to 5 years. Then we take that liquid and transfer it into different casks for finishing. And so we have a port expression, we have that cider expression you have there. We have a Chardonnay or Cabernet expression.
There's
there
this
it
for
is.
everyone who wants to see it. Renee, here's the here's cask.
Exactly. And then we have a toasted oak expression as well. And
Yeah.
so for the cider that you're holding now, it is a bit of a misnomer in being cider because it's several different types of casks that it does that secondary maturation in. So we use French Calvados, which is an apple brandy. We use American apple brandy from Laird's. Laird's is it's the oldest brand or distillery in the United States, and luckily it's only about 15 miles north of us. So we get those casks pretty wet of apple brandy. And then the rest is using a combination of primarily dry and some sweet cider. And so those are all different types of apple casks, but we didn't want to call it, apple whiskey because, people would think it was more like a flavored whiskey like Jack Daniel's, Crown Royal apple. So we went with cider. And I think that does kind of give the essence of what's going on there with all those different full casks without overpowering it, right? We do like the whiskey to be able to speak through all those casks, not just the sweet flavors of something that might be flavored.
Well, everything went, just so everyone knows that I met Gareth a few weeks ago and we went through tastings and it was divine and everything is so yummy.
Okay.
The cider cask, I had never had any whiskey in a cider cask before.
Mhm.
And the nose is pure apples and the taste is pure whiskey. It is just such a
Yeah.
wonderful combination. So I personally am very happy that you did it.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's great to hear. And, really, I mean, all of our whiskeys, but particularly in the finishing series, our lead blender, Amanda Beckwith, is really the artist behind it. There is a lot of science in distilling, particularly, and some in aging. But once you get to blending, you're kind of mixing art and science. And as you might have gathered, being a finance guy, I'm more on the science than the art side. But Amanda really takes the ball and runs with it. She has an amazing palate. She's trained with some of the best in the world, and is able to tease out different flavors out of casks and put them in the right combination for a really great expression. So.
Yeah, well, this one is. Now, are you working on anything new that you could tell us about, or that's the newest?
We always are for sure. And it's an interesting thing about working on new things is you kind of have this balance of you don't want to go all in on a product approach because you don't know how good it's going to be. But then on the other hand, you can have something that is good and it's like, oh no, we didn't make enough. And given the timelines around whiskey, that really becomes challenging. So, I'm thinking through. I know that there's a brandy cask or three from our early days that I don't know what was going on with those casks, but it's nearly inert. Might as well put it in plastic or stainless steel. It hasn't really done much. We have some rum casks that are amazing. They're just taking forever to go anywhere. So if that becomes our big fan favorite, we're going to have quite the issue with the time machine making more. We've gone the wrong way with Chardonnay before. We had some good casks. We had some very bad casks. And so, anything new that we're trying, we're just always facing that awkward, prognostication of, is it good enough that we're going to want to have plenty, or is it going to miss the mark and, oh no, we have plenty. So it's kind of an awkward balance. But in the Encouraging Eviction line, we have about 1% that we've allocated for experimental casks. So anything that's not part of the normal. Sometimes we've done more, sometimes less, but played around with a lot of different types of sherry. So whether it's Amontillado or I guess is a Madeira a type of sherry? Maybe it's not technically, right? But fortified wines. We've got plenty of Marsala. Yeah, some of those things. And like I mentioned, rum and some various other types. Now in the finishing series, the house line, that is much easier because you're not waiting, 6, 7, 8 years.
Right.
You're waiting somewhere between 6 to 24 months on the finish. Our recent expansion in that line has been with beer finishes. And that's been a really interesting opportunity. We call the line Brewers Coalition because we work with different breweries around the country, and it's really interesting because again, you'll have the marketing folks say, "Hey, it's a great operation that we'd love to be co-branded with." But then, when the rubber hits the road, they have to be able to make a high quality product and take
Right.
good enough care of their casks that we'll get a great product together. So I believe we have about half a dozen of those this year that are all limited releases. We have Goose Island out of Chicago. We have Boulevard Brewery out of Kansas City. We have Four Hands out of what is that, Wisconsin? Hopefully I didn't get that wrong. But a good range of those that we introduce, and generally we do the most of those cases go to the relevant markets, and then we kind of sprinkle the other cases around the country. But it's neat because it's a way to kind of bring who's ever heard of a random distillery in Virginia? Well, if we partner with a local brewery, then kind of shows what we're able to do, and gives us that kind of credibility. So yeah, those have been some of the most recent expressions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They sound
Is it-
so interesting. They really do. I've never tried anything like that. So next, hopefully you'll do one with the Pennsylvania brewery. So the next time I'm in Philadelphia, I can have some. But
There you go. Yeah, we'll get
yeah,
on it for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, I'd love to hear more about the experience that people can have when they come to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of
Absolutely.
that, because if someone's listening and they want to, try your things or happen to be in Virginia,
Yeah.
or planning a trip to Virginia soon, where is it? What do you do? I'm sure you do a tour, but, why don't you tell
Yeah.
us?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely been a big part of the distillery is being able to visit the location, do a tour, and kind of interact with it, because it is somewhat unique, right? Most people don't have traditional Scottish pot still, right? At a distillery, most people are making American single malts, and we are at a reasonable scale compared to a lot of craft distilleries. And we actually are officially the Virginia Whiskey Museum. So we have a museum in the basement of our visitor center that kind of goes through all the history of not just our company, but all of the whiskey in Virginia over the years, going back to George Washington and some of the Scots Irish that came and settled the area. But yeah, I mean, we are located in a town called Lovingston, Virginia. That is about a half hour south of where I'm sitting right now in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is where UVA, University of Virginia, is located. Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home, is over that hill there. Yeah, when people come to visit, obviously we can go through flights of all the tastings, but I think the best part is actually getting to kind of look and smell and taste and feel what the production process is like. Of course, that's one thing when you're in the distillery. It's much more exciting when you're in the cask houses when you actually get to drink it as it's finished. But yeah, no, it's a great experience, and we always try to get partners that we're working with, distributors and importers, to visit, because it's one of those things that's difficult, like many places, to do justice, just with like a website or some photographs. But actually being able to come and experience it firsthand. I often tell people, spring and fall, you get 3 weeks in the spring, 3 weeks in the fall that are really, really nice. But if it is that sweaty, hot August, there is something about understanding, okay, this is what's happening to the casks, right? They are expanding and contracting and sweaty, just like I am, and getting to really experience that. So yeah, that's what our location's like.
Yeah, and it's such a tribute to your dad and his
For
hard
sure.
work,
Yeah,
his courage and conviction, and which
uh,
obviously runs through the veins of the whole Moore family, because you're sitting here
for sure.
having a lot of courage to do something that wasn't even your idea and win awards. and have all of these
Yeah.
wonderful whiskeys at hand. So I really salute you for taking that and running with it, because the easier choice would have been to just say, you know what, forget it, we're not going to do it. So it really is a testament to your dad.
Right?
What'd you
But
say?
no, I said it might have been the smarter choice as well, but thank goodness that I was naive, and I thought it was going to be easier than it has been. But certainly being where we are now, and having the relative success that we are is very fulfilling, and above all, it's really the quality of the liquid. I know Dad would much prefer high quality liquid, and selling what we are now versus selling out everything around the world, but having suboptimal liquid. So that's definitely a fulfilling thing when I'm on the road and working with distributors and retailers and so on. It is pretty rare to not get a smiling face after somebody tastes whiskey. So that's that. Really
I don't
does
think that
fulfill
would
me.
have ever happened. Okay, that would never have happened. It would always be great liquid. I can tell. That's just the Moore thing.
Yeah.
Right. It's
There we
Moorish.
go.
Can
There we
I
go.
say that? It's Moorish.
There we go. There we go. I appreciate
Well,
that for
thank you
sure.
so much for sitting down with me and taking the time to
Thank you.
tell me your story.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it and appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So hopefully see you in London, or maybe I'll come over to Virginia.
Why not both?
Yeah, both. Exactly. I like that thinking. Courage and conviction. Two things.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Thank you again, Gareth. And
Thank
I'll see you soon.